today I'd like to talk about something that seems to be eluding a lot of people, 1, 4, and 5. You know, we talk about numbers, and I'll get to all that later, but it's important to know, to be able to identify for the purposes of, well, almost all music, but certainly blues and to some degree pop music. If you can identify the 1, the 4, and the 5, you'll find that there's so many songs that utilize the 1, 4, and the 5. So going right ahead into it, what do I mean by that? Well, so we're going to pick the key of G, and you'll get to that in a bit, why that works really well for this particular lesson. But so most people, hopefully by now, know their bar chords, and if you do, if you know your bar chord, like your G bar chord, okay, right there on the 3rd fret, and then they know their power chords, which is a C and a D, okay? So if you indeed do know a G, a C, and a D, then this lesson will be helpful for you, helpful to you. So to identify, just to cut right to the chase, to identify the 4 and the 5, you've got this, the G is the 1, there's your root, there's your G note, right? So one way to do it, and I was talking to my partner Jason about this, a lot of people, myself included, go for visuals. They do really well with visuals. So if you envision an L shape, okay, like that. So an L being, this is a G, and then this right below it on the A string is a C, that's a 4, okay? So 1, 4, there's your L, to D, which is your 5, okay? So you got 1, 4, sorry, 4, 5. And that's an easy way to identify. So how does that work with chords? Well, you got your G bar chord, and then again, you're doing your C power chord. There's your C note, there's your 4, C major, right, power chord. And you go up 3 and you got D, which is your 5 chord. Now the sound of that is something that we all recognize by now. So many different songs, right? I can think of several. So there I'm obviously doing a low G, inverted, you know, a different inversion, an open G, C, B. But sooner or later, we all have to memorize the chords. I mean, that you just got to do. And I always say one of the early exercises I learned was to identify all the notes in the low E string, because if you can do that with the knowledge I just gave you about 1, 4, 5, you're now in a position to call out the 1, 4, 5 in any key, right? So my example would be an open E. Well, we know that the L would be the open A. And then following that L would be the B note, which is, so again, it's 1, 4, 5. That's the sound of it, 1, 4, 5. Now, if you're traveling up the neck, and again, you do have to, whether you put a piece of tape here or whatever you got to do, you got to know it's E, F sharp, E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A, and so on all the way up. So it stands to reason that if the root note on the E string is your root chord, and we know by what I just showed you, by doing an L, you can identify the 4 and the 5, then you know now, if you know your bar chords, which are always the same all the way up, right? You got E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A, and so on. You can travel up and down the neck with that, right? And the minor, same way. We'll get to that in a second. 1 minor, 4 minor, 5 minor, it all still applies. So this is a way, I think, to hopefully clarify and simplify the 1, 4, 5 story, so that you at least know those basic chords. And I'm going to do one other thing before this lesson is over. I'm going to give you the 6 minor, because I think it's important to know. And then we'll talk about the minor chords and how that applies. Okay, but I know this, theory is a funny thing. A lot of people get really turned off by theory. It doesn't, it's an academic study, and for a lot of people, they're better off just being shown a visual that is really simple and works. My wife is like that. She's got a great right hand. She plays finger picking. She has great rhythm. She's a dancer. So her right hand is fine, but it's the left hand that she has, getting those bar chords and understanding where the 1, the 4, the 5 is, how that works. And not everybody's mind works the same way, so you gotta do that. So basically, if you're in, like I said, E, A, B, and then F, B flat, C, same pattern. F sharp, same. G, we just were there. And all the way up. And then you're back at E again. So that pattern always works for 1, 4, 5. Okay? Now let's expand our knowledge just a little bit. If we know that this is a 1, and then we establish the 4s right there in the L shape, your C power, D power. Now let's go up 2 more, and I know this is a bit of a stretch maybe for some of you. We're going to go to the E minor, which is your relative minor to the key of G, and we won't go any further than that in terms of explaining it, other than to say it's a 6 minor chord, and I'll explain that in a minute. So you're going up, what you've done to your G, your C, and your D, 1, 4, 5, and you go up 2 more frets, and you're at your 6th chord, which is an E. Okay, now if you know your minor chords, your minor bar chords, you probably do by now. If you know a power chord, all you do is flatten the 3rd, and you got a minor chord, right? E minor. It's one of the many ways to make an E minor. So what that sounds like in terms of, for our ear training, right? Because we've all heard, you've heard that too, right? It sounds very familiar. So that's the sound of a 6 minor chord. Now, and the reason one of the reasons I picked the key of G is because I can also illustrate to you the sound, the organicness of a major to a relative minor, that sound. We've all heard it a lot. Old rock and roll is one of the G, E minor. Okay, that I know you've heard. So many different songs. I was doing with Paul Simon, Slip Sliding Away. Slip sliding away, yeah. That's a 6 minor sound. And then it goes 1 to the 5D, to the 4C, back up to the 5D, sliding away. Now that's a great vehicle or a great song to, I like to use songs as kind of a, jumping off place, where, or like a springboard, I should say, where you use a song to illustrate a little bit of theory. Okay, so I want you to get familiar with not just the mental exercise of 1, 4, 5, 6, 5, 4, 1. Okay, that's a simple math we can get with. The visual, the L. Okay, and then the sound of it, though. We've all heard that, it sounds familiar, but I want you to, in your mind, know that that's the sound of going from a major G chord to a relative minor V minor. But what I like about this example is we can do the down to that E minor. You probably really have heard that a lot, right? Now in the case of it, the sound of it in C would be to an A minor. We know that because we can illustrate our same math program from go all the way up to a C bar chord, right? Using that same methodology, C. Now let's do the L again. There's your F. There's your G. 1, 4, 5, 4, 1, 4, 5, 6 minor, A minor. So once again, that. I don't want to go a lot further than that today because I think it's important to keep this stuff simple and maybe bite-sized, cafeteria style, like what can you get in one sitting? And that's a lot to digest, right? But I think it's just enough, really, because I think the 1, 4, 5 is not too hard to really visualize, I think. I mean, that I can get. And honestly, this is what kind of the way I learned guitar. When I first started playing back in the day, I was listening to songs that, a lot of songs that had a 1, 4, 5 to it. Hang on, Sloopy, hey.